It had been a long day, one of those that stretches you thin without ever breaking you. I'd left the office later than usual, mind cluttered with numbers, emails, that passive-aggressive remark from a coworker I didn't have the energy to unpack. The sky was gray, that flat Ohio kind of gray, not threatening storm, just tired-looking. I pulled into the driveway, juggling my purse, leftover takeout, and the heavy thoughts of tomorrow's to-do list. Then, snap. One step out of the car, and the world tilted. My foot found black ice hiding in plain sight. I didn't even have time to brace. There was a sickening crack. My body hit the pavement, hard. Cold seared through my back. The pain in my leg was instant and sharp, like lightning had burrowed inside the bone. At first, I didn't scream. I just lay there, staring at the thin layer of frost on the windshield, blinking in disbelief. "Okay," I muttered. "Just a sprain." But I knew better. I couldn't move my leg. I couldn't even breathe right. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking, trying not to cry. My first instinct? Call Mom. Even after everything. She picked up. Her voice was flat, distracted. "Hey," I gasped. "I think I broke my leg." I slipped outside. Silence. Then a sigh. "Are you sure it's broken? You always overreact." "I can't move." "Well, maybe rest it a bit, take some Advil." "You'll be fine." She hung up before I could respond. Just like that. So, I lay there. The ice crept through my coat, through the cracks in my pride. Alone. At the hospital, the cold gave way to sterile light and the soft beep of machines. The nurse was kind, her eyes full of practiced sympathy. "Your parents must be on their way," she said as she adjusted my fore. I didn't correct her. The doctor came in, holding a clipboard like a verdict. Compound fracture. 2 places. You'll need surgery. I nodded, not because I was brave, just because I was tired. I reached for my phone again, hoping for even a single text. Nothing. No missed calls. No "how are you holding up?" Just a blank screen. Lying there, the pain in my leg dulled beneath something heavier. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't even angry. Just familiar with this silence. I'd always been invisible unless someone needed something. Morning crept in, slow and pitiless. I tried again, called Mom. She answered after the 3rd ring. Her tone was clipped. "It's not that serious, Madeline." I let that hang there, swallowing the lump in my throat. My mind drifted backward, me as a kid, feverish on the couch while she stepped over me to fold laundry. My high school graduation, where they forgot to bring flowers because we thought you'd understand. They'd always admired my strength. Called me independent. What they meant was, you're on your own. I'd built a life, a career, kept my emotions in a tidy little box. But now, flat on a hospital bed, that box cracked wide open. The nurse stepped out. I stared at the ceiling. What was the cost of being the strong one? I remembered a saying from somewhere, maybe a podcast, sometimes the ones who raised you teach you how to live without them. That one stuck. The tears came, slow and quiet. Not for the pain in my leg. For the ache of finally accepting that no one was coming. Then, a soft knock. Eva. My colleague from marketing. We weren't that close. A few lunches here and there, but she was there now, standing in the doorway holding soup, a bag of snacks, and the kind of smile that says, "You matter." She pulled up a chair. I heard what happened. You okay? I nodded. Been better. She shook her head. Your family should be here. I didn't respond. She handed me the soup. You deserve better than people who only show up when it benefits them. That landed deep. It wasn't just the soup. It was that someone showed up, unprompted. Chosen family. Maybe that matters more. Later that night, long after Eva left, I scrolled through old photos. Most were forgettable. Then one stopped me, Mom and Dad at a 4th of July cookout, grinning ear to ear. Arms around my brother, Jason. I wasn't in that photo. Not even the corner of it. A thought took shape. A quiet vow. If they couldn't see me broken, they sure as hell were going to see me rise. I stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched, eyes dry. This wasn't just about a leg. It was about years of being sidelined, written off. My phone buzzed just before sunrise. It was a text from Mom. Glad you're okay. Don't make a big deal out of it. That was it. I stared at the words. Then laughed, sharp, humorless. One tear broke loose. They thought it wasn't serious, I whispered to the ceiling. Maybe that's their biggest mistake yet. 3 days after the hospital sent me home, I sat alone in the back of a rideshare, my crutches awkward against the door. The driver didn't ask why I didn't have family picking me up. I appreciated that. The ride felt longer than it was. When we pulled into my apartment complex, I thanked him, paid through the app, and stood there a minute before moving, just watching the wind nudge the edge of the welcome mat that hadn't felt welcoming in a long time. Inside, the air was still. Everything was in place, my throw blanket folded on the couch, shoes lined up by the door, a candle half burnt on the windowsill. But it felt hollow. A place full of my things, but none of my presence. Like I'd been living someone else's idea of me. I dropped my bag and sat down, slowly unwrapping the ace bandage. The painkillers were in the kitchen drawer. I took one, washed it down with lukewarm tap water, and stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. You're young. You'll heal fast, Mom had said on a voicemail. She never asked when the surgery was. No one did. By late afternoon, I was on the couch, leg propped up, scrolling through nonsense just to avoid thinking. That's when Eva's message came through. Check Jenica's story. I tapped it open. A family dinner. Long table. Laughter frozen in digital stills. Everyone was there, my parents, my brother, my aunt, and there, right next to Jenica, Everett. Everett. My ex. He had one arm around her chair. She was smiling like she'd won something. The caption read, "So blessed to spend this night with those I love most." It hit like a punch straight to the gut. Not just that they were together. That they were public. That my family, sat around a table with him and smiled for the camera. No one told me. No one even thought it might matter. I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. He'd left me with some excuse about needing time. I need to focus on myself, he'd said. It's not about you. That was 7 months ago. Now here he was. Sitting next to my sister. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there, heart thudding slow and steady, like it was counting down to something. It wasn't about Everett anymore. It was about how replaceable I'd become. Jenica had always been the softer one. The agreeable one. The one who said yes when I said no. I used to think our differences made us a good team, like opposite pieces of the same coin. But maybe I was just the one who made waves. The difficult daughter. They didn't lose a daughter, I muttered aloud, they just found a better placeholder. I texted Eva, they're not just blind. They're complicit. The word sat there on the screen, sharp and final. I leaned back, mind rewinding. My mom brushing off Jenica's bad grades. My dad laughing at her jokes even when they didn't land. Meanwhile, I brought home promotions, awards, self-sufficiency, and it barely made a dent. Love in our house had terms and conditions. You were accepted, as long as you didn't make things uncomfortable. I remembered being sick as a child, hiding it so I wouldn't cause trouble. I remembered fixing my own dress hem before prom. I remembered being told I was resilient like it was a compliment, when it was really a license for neglect. That night, I pulled out a journal. First time in years. I wrote down everything I didn't say out loud. About the silence, the favoritism, the betrayals served with a smile. The ink bled a little from the pressure I put on the pen. But it felt real. The next day, Eva called. Asked if I wanted to get coffee. We met at this quiet little place near her neighborhood, where the chairs didn't match and the barista knew her name. I sipped black coffee while the sun hit the window just right, making the dust in the air look like static. I'm sorry, she said, after I showed her the photo. I nodded. You okay? No. But I'm awake. She tilted her head. You gonna let it go? They didn't break me, I said, stirring my cup, they exposed themselves. She smiled, not out of joy, but respect. Now that's the you I believe in. I told her about the black card, how I'd gotten it from a client deal no one in my family ever asked about. She blinked. But she didn't say wow or ask how much I made. She just nodded. I figured you were holding more than you let on. Back home, I didn't waste time. I opened the drawer beneath my bed. Pulled out a small fireproof box. Inside, documents, copies of medical files, letters never sent, audio recordings I'd saved from awkward family voicemails. I started sorting. Making digital copies. Naming files. Labeling folders. I wasn't preparing revenge. I was building my defense. Late into the evening, I made a call. A legal firm I'd once helped with branding. The receptionist answered, cheerful. How can we help, Ms. Danvers? The sound of my name, spoken with intention, settled something in me. That night, as I lay in bed, the room bathed in soft yellow light, my phone buzzed again. It was Jenica. Hope you're healing. Mom said you've been quiet lately. I didn't answer. Instead, I whispered into the silence, they wanted me quiet. Let's see how loud silence can get. Jenica's voice note arrived just as dusk softened the room. Her tone was light, almost teasing, hey, hope the leg's healing okay. Don't push yourself. I listened. No anger. Just a slow burn of something raw in my chest. It felt like a whisper in a house full of ghosts. I almost deleted it, clipped it, silenced it forever, but I didn't. I saved it. Because she needed to know I heard her. I leaned back against pillows, letting the silence stretch. A voice in my head, not all knives cut. Some just keep poking. That line cracked something inside me. There was care in her words, but coated in sugar, sugar that dissolves to show bitterness beneath. Later, changing the sheets, I discovered the quilt, faded, frayed at the edges, stitched by Grandma decades ago. Its fabric smelled of memory. As I folded it, my fingers brushed a hidden seam. It triggered a rush. I remembered slipping down the stairs in high school, breaking my wrist. Dad had told me to shake it off. That phrase echoed. Back then, I thought he meant toughness. Now I see he meant erasure. Every time I was hurt, they said I exaggerated. Every time, I silenced myself first. I sat with that quilt in my lap, staring at a missing patch. It wasn't just cloth gone, the absence symbolized what I lost: validation, acknowledgement, a place. The pain in my leg now felt like part of a lifelong script, one I refused to keep repeating. Then my phone rang. My father. First call since discharge. "You still mad at us for not coming?" he asked. I swallowed. "I didn't expect you to." He scoffed. "You act like we left you on the highway." He could not see. Or he refused to see. They never apologized, they accused me of dramatizing. That gesture stung deeper than any physical blow. I ended the call before I lost control. I reopened the journal, the one I'd started in chapter 2. This time, I wrote a timeline: every bruise they ignored, every "you'll get over it," every moment I faded so others appeared brighter. I wrote, "You don't become distant overnight. You collect every bruise in silence." The ink blurred in spots. But the truth felt cleaner now. I no longer doubted my memories. Needing air, I stepped outside. The night was cold. The street lamp haloed me in pale gold. A little girl stood on the sidewalk, shoulders shaking, hands covering her face. I approached. She looked up. 10 years old, maybe. "My mom said I'm too dramatic," she whispered. I sat next to her. We didn't speak for a long moment. Then I said, softly, "It's okay to feel. Even when they tell you you're not." She blinked. Nodded. I stayed until she got a bus. That moment mirrored me years ago, when I cried behind closed doors. Only now, I offered solace. Not for show, just because I recognized the hurt. Back in my apartment, I placed the quilt on my chair, closed my journal, and looked through my files. They had underestimated quiet. I would show them what silence builds. A small envelope lay on the table when I returned. My name, hand-lettered, on the front, Jenica's script. Inside, an invitation to her engagement party with Everett. A note that said, "Hope you'll come. We need you there." I didn't respond. I placed it among the stack of evidence. They think silence means surrender. They're wrong. I stepped out of my car onto familiar pavement, crutches clicking against concrete. The dusk sky sagged low, heavy with expectation. I wondered, briefly, if I should have stayed home. But they'd insisted, just dinner. So here I was, entering the house I once felt part of but no longer recognized. The foyer was hushed. I passed portrait after portrait, generations of craze smiling back. Yet my childhood photo wasn't there. I paused, fingers brushing the frame beside it, catching the blank space. They curated memory, and I wasn't included. I greeted Lorna, Silas, Tenley. My voice was steady. I hid the ache behind politeness. "Hello, everyone." I set my satchel beside the coat rack, the weight both literal and symbolic. Dinner began, then Jenica clapped her hands. "Let's see the family highlight reel." Reluctantly, we moved into the living room. She advanced to the laptop. The first images showed birthdays, vacations, professional awards, cheerful, complete. But missing me. No photos of my own achievements. Every caption praised Tenley, our shining star, smart heart of our family. I sank into my seat as the omissions wound tight. That was the twist. I was erased from their narrative. My presence, my work, my struggles, never made it into their story. I felt bitterness welling, the swallowing quiet of years. I stayed silent, letting the show play. Then, after the slideshow, Jenica's voice curled across the room. I always wondered how someone so dramatic would show up tonight. Laughter rippled. A guest played a funny message, my own voice, pitched wrong, saying it's not that serious. The distortion made me sound weak, childish. That's when the facade cracked. My voice, my truth, twisted to look absurd. My grip tightened on the cane. I leaned forward. "Excuse me." The room stilled. I looked at every face. "I'd like to say something." I paused. And said, "I wasn't asking for approval. But I remind you, you can erase moments, but you can't erase who lived them." I recalled a birthday they forgot. A speech I never got to finish. The same patterns they buried in silence. Tenley jumped in, "You're overreacting." I shook my head. I held their eyes. No, the word came soft, but unshakably. I didn't come back for applause. I came back for truth. I stood. With deliberate calm I cued files from my satchel, images of awards, performance reports, client letters. Then the voice message file, the unedited one. The contrast stunned them. Voices tumbled into silence. I said, "This isn't drama. This is correction." The calm in my voice flared with authority. They found no words. Lorna's cheeks reddened. Tenley's gaze drifted. I turned off the slideshow. I gathered my satchel. The house felt smaller then, suffocating with withheld truths. "Dinner ends now," I said, voice steady. Then I turned toward the hall, and there it was, an envelope resting on the dining table. My name, in my handwriting, but written in her script. I lifted it gently, slipped it into my coat. They left me a message, in their handwriting. I walked into my apartment building just as dawn broke, legs heavy, heart heavier. I carried the unopened envelope in one hand, like a weight I wasn't ready to lift. Inside, the silence of that paper seemed louder than the dinner tonight. In the kitchen, I dropped into a chair. The walls felt familiar, but now, they felt like a cage. I stared at framed photos, old certificates, Louise's painting in the corner. All reminders, this was home, but not enough. I thought of Maya Angelou's line, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." She wasn't just speaking. She was warning. I pulled open a drawer and grabbed my journal. Not for healing. For record. With pen in shaky hand, I began writing, dates, voices, omissions, bruises. The weight in my chest settled into clarity. By afternoon, I had composed an email to Jenica. Calm. Precise. Factual. I described the manipulated voice message, the slideshow that erased me, and the envelope with my name in her handwriting. I didn't lash out. I issued a quiet warning, actions have consequences, even when no one claps. I typed, "I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for a finish line." I pressed send and watched my own resolve echo back. 36 hours passed with no word. My phone sat silent. Then a message landed, "You're overthinking this." It wasn't personal. The dismissal cut deep, but I let it land. They call it drama when you ask for respect. I replied nothing. I deleted the thread. Silence, this time, was my answer. Later, I sat with the envelope before me. I pried it open. Inside, a photocopy of my birth certificate and a post-it note in Mother's hand, reading, "You always belonged, even when it didn't feel like it." But the name was misspelled, the last name twisted in the certificate, an extra letter missing. Their message of belonging came with error. I set it aside, letting the irony harden my resolve. Evening came with chill wind. I walked outside, in the dark, boots crunching on dead leaves. I passed the high school hall where teenage laughter spilled from classrooms. My throat closed for a moment, my absence echoed back to me. If my absence doesn't matter, maybe neither does my return, I muttered to the emptiness. Back inside, I shut the door and began assembling my armor. I pulled financial statements, trust paperwork, surgical notes, legal filings. I organized folders. Filed files. Every document a footprint of my existence. I looked up terms, trust law, emotional abuse, inheritance. It wasn't war yet. It was insurance. By midnight, I sat at my desk. The room glowed from a single lamp. I wrote a letter to my father, not to send, but to bleed. I learned silence from you. But I'm using it differently. I folded it, tucked it into the envelope among her note, slipped the bundle into a locked drawer. My throat was tight, chest cold. If they knock again, they'll find a different version of me answering. I thought the silence might at least settle things. For a moment, I felt peace. Volunteering at the women's support circle downtown, helping others find their footing gave me grounding. I cooked dinner for myself. I balanced spreadsheets and receipts. I smiled quietly at the rhythm I carved. It was enough, until it wasn't. First blow came mid-morning. My phone rang. The landlord's voice was tight, distracted. "We've had a report, you're hoarding unstable chemicals at home." My heart stuttered. "Excuse me?" I asked, stunned. Before I could reply, officers appeared at my door. Confusion swelled, then anger. They asked me to step outside, asked to search. I watched the faces of neighbors peek through windows. I stayed composed. "Feel free to check," I said. "I have nothing to hide." They searched. Found nothing dangerous. No charges filed. But damage was done. My name was stained, a question mark in the neighborhood. A whisper amplifies in silence. The next day, my reputation was on blast. A post in the local group called me mentally unstable and hostile toward my family. Comments piled up. Someone asked, did she ever forgive them? Another, always dramatic. I knew who was behind it. Jenica. The lies had armor now, proof posted by others, reshared by people I thought neutral. College friends messaged, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Betrayal curdled in my stomach. I was exposed to their permission and their gaze. At work, a coworker dropped her voice near the water cooler. "Heard you've been in family drama, hope things settle." My pulse quickened, but I forced calm. I could respond. But I chose not to. They wanted a spectacle. I would give them silence and strategy instead. I started collecting digital receipts, screenshots of posts, call logs. Piece by piece, I traced the web of lies. My creak of privacy turned into a stream of evidence. Then the hammer fell. One major client withdrew, no explanation. The void felt orchestrated. I sat at my desk, hands curled into fists, internal fire rising. But I didn't lash out. I wrote an internal letter to them, documenting betrayal, detailing losses. I built everything from scraps. And they still think I'm disposable. That night, I scheduled a Zoom with a lawyer. I stood before the mirror, face lined with fatigue and resolve. No one gets to rewrite my truth, I said to the reflection. Then I opened the webcam app. I hit record. My voice steady. The decision was made. If they wanted the world involved, they'd get it, on my terms. Late at night, I sat in my study, documents strewn across the oak desk. The envelope, opened, cracked, lay in front of me. I reread my mother's note, hopeful words printed next to a name she'd misspelled. I laid out trust contracts, copies of the original will before the change, the manipulated voice files. The room was heavy with power, silence, expectation. I breathed deeply and poured a glass of water, steadying the tremor in my hand. This wasn't about revenge. This was about restoration. Morning came. I drafted an email to a legal aid columnist in the region. I attached a redacted timeline of every abuse, the removal of my name from inheritance documents, the distorted voice messages, the smear campaign. I asked for anonymity but insisted on accountability. I thought, if they want me in the spotlight, I'll own it on my terms. That evening, I requested they join me in the study. I placed the documents in front of Lorna and Silas. I said, "Why was my name removed from the will?" Silence. Lorna stammered. My father sat quiet, shoulders slumped. I laid out evidence, the notarized will before their rewrite, the audio files, every detail. Calm, logical, steady. I quoted legal rights, fairness, duty. The quiet in the room roared around me. Then Lorna erupted, "You're always working. You leave no room for us emotionally." Tenley and Delora appeared in the doorway. Lorna's voice rose. "We don't get enough of you." The accusation hung like a guillotine. Their tone, I had no space to belong. Gaslighting masked as criticism. I stood firm. I never asked to be visible. I earned the right to exist. I pressed play. First, the original voice message, clear, firm. Then the manipulated version, altered, exaggerated. My voice twisted into caricature. Their faces changed. Shock. Fear. Guilt. I pulled out my mother's note from the envelope, pointed to the misspelling. The irony was sharp. Silence enveloped them. My files, my evidence, the truth, they could no longer dismiss. I stood, gathered my papers. "I'm done being your ghost," I said, voice soft but final. Later, back at my apartment, I found an envelope slipped under the door. No name. Just, "From someone who remembers you." I opened it carefully. Inside one line, "Meet me where you were broken." The promise was haunting. I touched the paper lightly and whispered, "They thought control meant silence. But now, I choose who tells the story." I woke before sunrise, heart already alert. The house was quiet. I gathered every piece of proof I'd collected, investment statements, property deeds, the original will draft, voice files. My fingers trembled as I stacked them. I typed a statement to publish tonight, no vengeance, just facts. My pulse steadied with purpose. I scheduled a live stream for late evening, telling myself, tonight, I show. At dinner, I asked for the remote. The family paused in surprise. Then I flipped the slideshow to my version. The screen changed. I displayed graphs, bank balances, property photos, assets they'd erased. Gasps swept across faces. The lights in the room felt sharper. I spoke in calm, "I built all this. No gifts. No handouts. The contrast between their narrative and mine fell like glass. The room trembled with shock. I laid out the legal documents, deeds listing me as owner of the venue, the family cottage, long before Tenley acquired hers. I juxtaposed their show's credits with the registry records I held. They tried to obscure. Their faces shifted: denial, anger, betrayal. I looked at them and said, legally, I was never removed. They just pretended I was. Then I played a video clip I had recorded earlier, my mother, quietly, saying, I never wanted her around. The silence was immediate, crushing. Her cheeks burned. I didn't gloat. I let the clip speak louder than words. Their line now had audio proof. The air thickened. Emotions sharpened. Truth held them still. I told viewers on the live stream, if I'm not reinstated legally by week's end, I'll upload the full evidence. I called out those who spread lies. I invited rebuttal: make your case factually. My voice held authority, no tremble. Confidence crackled. Tenley stormed out, Delora stuttered, Lorna remained frozen, Silas trembled. I watched their fractures become visible. Every twitch, every eye shift, every swallowed retort, I logged in my mind. I turned off the stream. Screenshots would spread. The damage was done. Later, in that same living room, I stayed. The house emptied, tension residual. Then a knock at the back door. Avis stood holding a folder of documents. Things she never let you see, she said softly. I opened it. Papers, letters, old contracts she hid. Final line, she thought no one ever saw. But someone did. The morning after everything unraveled, I sat alone in the back garden of the Cray estate. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the sky had started softening. The kind of blue that looks like it remembers pain but chooses to be gentle anyway. The confrontation had been 3 days ago. The house was quiet now. Most of the family hadn't spoken to me since the live stream. Not a call. Not a text. Silence, again, but this time, I welcomed it. Online, it was a different world. Messages from strangers, people I didn't know, flooded my inbox. Women from small towns, former students, even men who'd said they watched the stream with their daughters. Some distant cousins reached out with apologies. One old neighbor said, we always knew something was off. Thank you for saying it. I didn't reply to everyone, but I read every line. It felt strange, being seen more by people I didn't know than by the ones who raised me. There was a comfort in it, mixed with exhaustion. You don't win a war like that and walk away untouched. Avis came by that afternoon. She looked different, lighter, somehow. Said she had something for me. She handed me a tin box she found in my mother's closet. Locked. I pried it open gently. Inside was a second will. Dated a full year after the one Tenley submitted. My name was listed as the sole heir to my mother's personal estate. Everything. No conditions. No exclusions. I stared at the paper for a long time. Why didn't she ever file this? I asked. Avis sighed, looked down at her shoes. Because it made you too powerful. And she was afraid of that. It didn't sting like I thought it would. Not anymore. I scanned every line, photographed every page, and quietly began preparing court documents. Not to make a scene. Just to make it legal. I sat with the idea of pressing charges. Taking them to court. Publicly naming every lie, every manipulation. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. They wanted a spectacle. I'd rather win on my terms. I reclaimed my name on every deed. The properties were restored. My identity untangled from their shadows. That was enough. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better. Tenley reached out a week later. Asked to meet. I agreed, but on neutral ground, a diner off the highway. She looked older. Tired. Her voice held a shaky pride. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said. We thought you were always so distant. I listened. Then I answered, I forgive you. But not for you, for me. She nodded like she understood. But deep down, I knew she still didn't. And I didn't need her to. Back at the estate, I began work on something new. The house that once held whispers and wounds was gutted, literally and figuratively. I started a non-profit. A shelter for young women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, discarded. Funded with my own money. Staffed with people who understood what it meant to fight silently. The black card they used to mock me with? I turned it into the name of the organization. Not as a trophy, but a reminder. Of survival. Of resilience. We don't build legacies out of what they give us, but what we do with what they tried to take. I held a private ceremony in the garden. Just Avis, my core team, and 2 girls from the shelter. We burned the old will. I didn't need it anymore. I'd already rewritten my story in action. I walked through the house one last time, each room holding ghosts that no longer haunted. I closed each door slowly, not out of anger, but out of grace. Some wounds don't need reopening. They just need space to heal. As I reached the front door, ready to lock it behind me, Avis called out. You forgot something. She handed me a sealed envelope. My mother's handwriting across the front. I hadn't seen that curve in years. She never mailed it, Avis said quietly. Maybe she was afraid or maybe she hoped you'd find it now.